Audio Jungle.
I am the Divine Prince, Tai Emeka, Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, author, advisor, Elagun Oloye Hoodoo Obeya Bokur. I reside in this beautiful and legendary historic Treme, New Orleans, Louisiana. So join me as I share food, music, culture, tradition, the rhythms and the flavor of New Orleans voodoo. Respect the voodoo.
At the beginning of this, maybe I was more skeptical. As the days have gone on, I'm not sure what I think anymore.
I felt that maybe it wouldn't affect me if I personally didn't believe in it.
So, knowing what you know now, would you still get cursed?
I'm seeking out a curse, a hex to put on myself.
A curse could end your life. You're literally begging the devil to knock on your door just to prove to you that God's real.
He could curse you with stupidity, but we think you got that down.
Despite the warnings, I'm investigating the real-world effects of dark magic.
Looks like you have a lot of love and a lot of opportunity. You are going to cause damage to that.
How do you feel after doing this?
Evil.
That must be quite seductive.
That's the power you're calling on. The devil, right? Quite seductive.
I'm going to enter into a pact with Satan.
Señor Satán, Lucifer, presentamos a este hermano. Con tu fuego purifica.
Wyong is pretty much the epicenter of all black magic. People are very scared to even talk about it.
Y'all better not call me at 2 o'clock in the morning talking about this man is dead. I don't want to hear that.
I have this physical feeling that something bad is coming. What have I done?
You're going to have to find faith in this in order to undo it.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes, powered by NONVD, National New Orleans Voodoo Day. You are now listening live and always in archive at your leisure and convenience to the Divine Prince, Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor, Elagun Oloye Hoodoo Obeya Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African hoodoo world spiritualist perspective, understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing if you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test in one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. And also joining me now live on my panel is the beloved Queen Mother, Sister Tony Val Martinez. Greetings and salutations to you, Welcome.
Greetings and salutations to you also. Peace and blessings to our audience. How are you tonight, Prince?
All is a blessing. I just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
That's all any of us really can do at this day and age.
Yes, yes. And yourself, what about you and yours?
We doing okay. We doing okay. Like you say, putting one foot in front of the other.
And greetings to you, Daniel Neal. Thank you so much for being a consistent listener and participant in our live podcast. We certainly invite others to join us by way of social media, wherever you may be listening and viewing us at this time. You can also join us live on air by clicking your URL and entering streamyard.com/, and enter the code that is now streaming at the bottom of your of your screen. Give me a moment, and I will pop it into the chat if that might make it easier for some of you to capture it and write it down. But certainly, there's a lot going on. The schedule never stops. I'm mindful that we are broadcasting tomorrow night on WBOK local radio. For those of you who are local, you certainly can join us. And for others, you can visit the WBOK website, and there is a link there that will provide for your listening pleasure. Wherever you have internet, you will be able to stream the broadcast. And that's airing tomorrow night between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Central Standard Time on WBOK Radio. And while it's on the tip of my tongue, I also don't want to neglect our annual New Orleans Sacred Music Festival. And the Sacred Music Festival takes place Saturday, March 22nd at the New Orleans Healing Center on St. Claude Avenue. I believe this is our 8th year doing the Sacred Music Festival. I, as well as many other interfaith practitioners, will have altars set up in this space. There will be a peace walk, arts and crafts, interactive workshops and demonstrations, an art exhibit, psychic readers, dance, prayer, blessings, storytelling, food, fun, and it is a family friendly event. La Source and and Mambo Sally will also be honoring and acknowledging Papa Legba in ritual for the Sacred Music Festival. So again, we certainly invite you to come out and participate. It's actually a day-long event at the Healing Center with 9 a.m. Dripong Kamong monks will be creating a world peace sand mandala, which they do every year. And it will be on display March 22nd and March 23rd in the Grand Hall of the Healing Center. And it's the huge sand mandalas that some of you may have seen them do on YouTube or documentaries where they take colored sand and create these beautiful, huge mandala symbols on the ground in various locations to bring peace, healing, and unified sacred vibration. So that will begin at 9. At 10 a.m., from 10 to noon, will be Peace Walk. From 12 noon to 12:30, Fire Puja at the Interest. I believe it's a Hindu fire puja ceremony at the entrance to the Grand Hall. There will also be the Andrew Wiseman and Ewe Ensemble performing West African Ghanaian indigenous music in the Grand Hall from 12:30 to 1:15. Very popular Tanya Boyd will be bringing her youth choir. Then at 1:20, Sunny D504 and friends will be joining us throughout the day on the lobby stage, as well as other local hip hop and rap and spoken word artists. 1:55 to 2 p.m., Rafiq Abdul Latif Muslim Call to Prayer. 2 to 2:45, Zen Temple Choir. 3:25 to 4:10, John Butte Gospels. 4:50 to 5:40 will be our Legba Voodoo ceremony in the Grand Hall. 5:45 to 7:15, Sean Johnson and the Wild Locust Band. There will be MCs Chuck Perkins and again Sunny D504 will be on hand. This is a free admission event. All are certainly welcome. And again, there will be a peace walk at 10 a.m. at St. Roch Park. And you can gather further information by visiting us at www.neworleanshealingcenter.org, located at 2372 St. Claude Avenue. And of course, we are uh, gearing up and counting down. Can I be heard? The Alchemist, greetings and salutations, Neophyte Bokur. Thank you so much for joining us again tonight. Tariq Lopez, we certainly appreciate you. Alafia. And again, Daniel Neal, we certainly appreciate you for joining us. So, Alchemist, make sure your volume is up, and I don't know, you're somehow not muting maybe your tab, but we're being heard. And we're gearing up for our second annual National New Orleans Voodoo Day, which will begin with our press conference on April 4th. I believe that will be at the Healing Center at Cafe Istanbul. Uh, on the 5th will be our symposium, which will include an Afro ecological demonstration and showing at Xavier University, along with the art exhibit at Xavier University with our symposium. And then on April 6th will be our actual day of events, beginning with a sacred ritual and libation at the river, at the Moonwalk, where the memorial plaque and commemoration for the Middle Passage is placed. And then we will process through the French Quarter to various local landmarks. And then we will make our way into Congo Square, where I will be meeting you at the tree to open a ancestral ceremony before our great event. And then we will have a traditional Haitian, West African, Louisiana voodoo ritual and ceremony in Congo Square. There will be food available as well as vendors and other um, culture bearers will be present and on point as a part of this great event. And certainly we want to acknowledge those dignitaries that will be coming from Haiti, who will be coming to assist us in the performance of our ritual, as well as the delegation from Ouida, Benin, from where we are sort of taking our motivation and gifted the power of such an event, which is held annually January 10th, Voodoo Day, January 10th in Ouida, Benin. And so this is a companion or sibling ceremony, if you will, to that event now being hosted here in this beautiful, enchanted, historic, and some would say even haunted city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And we invite everyone, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, cultural background, spiritual practice, but we certainly do invite our ATR, Aboriginal and African traditional religious system practitioners from the diaspora to certainly come and join us a part of this great and powerful historic event. And certainly each and every one of you, we certainly appreciate your continued love, support, sponsorship, and promotion sharing, resharing, posting of this great historic event now in our second year. Be a part of a transformative moment for New Orleans and the Pan African diaspora by sponsoring New Orleans National Voodoo Day. You're investing in cultural preservation, healing, and unity. Sponsorship of New Orleans National Voodoo Day is more than support for an event. It is an investment in the heart of our community. Join us in creating an unforgettable experience that celebrates history while increasing your business's connection to a dedicated and engaged audience. Let's create a brighter, more connected future, one celebration at a time. Sponsorship opportunities are available, and certainly we appreciate your donations and your offerings as we count days leading into our second annual National New Orleans Voodoo Day. Please visit us at www.vodouday.org. Again, this is www.voodooday.org, VODOUDAY.org. And we look forward to meeting and seeing you there. We will be providing a live streaming opportunity for a minimal donation that will be available for April 5th, the symposium, and then on April 6th for the actual day of the event. So, again, we certainly look forward and appreciate each and every one of you and your continued love, support, promotion, participation in this powerful and historic event. And while it's also on my mind, Queen Mother, Sister Tony Val, didn't you find some information out about St. Joe Night?
Oh, yes. I think the spirit just led me based upon the video that you sent me of a very intelligent and informed young man who was giving us a piece of New Orleans history and under various subjects. And one of the subjects was Italians and how the Italians were treated in the city of New Orleans. First, you have to understand that the terms white, where you group all people of European descent together under one label, is relatively new. In the 19th century, white people were classified by where they came from. You had the Irish, you had the English, you had the Italians. That's how they were labeled. And the Italians, upon coming to the city of New Orleans, where there was already a divide between the then small Spanish population, the large French population, and what was called the American population, which was white people from England who had been here for a long time and thought that they ran everything. Over the years, I had not been able to find out the connection between the Black Mexican Indians and the Italians in St. Joseph. I'll try to get through it kind of fast. I wrote it down so I wouldn't lose parts. And I could just read it. Italians, when they came to the city of New Orleans, along with the Irish, also were considered in the same social scheme of things as the freed blacks. Only the Italians were pretty much forced to live amongst the blacks and the Creoles. They didn't really have their own area of the city like we have the Irish channel where all the Irish seem to gravitate and live together. Italians lived in the mixed community of the blacks, and it was basically largely Sicilians, and they
And
were kind
hold
of.
on for a second. Hold on for a second, Tony, because I think I need to say this.
Hmm.
That was also because during that time, there was a hierarchy of shade and race and ethnicity, even in Europe. So the
Yeah.
closer you were to the Mediterranean, the closer you were to the sun, the more shade and color and tint and hue you had to your skin, they thought you were less evolved, less human than the northern, whiter, paler Europeans. And so that, as well as their, idea about slavery and race, certainly was transplanted here as well in New Orleans in particular. And so Italians were not necessarily thought of, as upstanding, respectable white people. They were seen as a, opposing ethnic group.
And let's not forget the ancestor Hannibal brought his troops into Italy, and black Africans ruled Italy for over 400 years.
Yes,
So
under the
you
Ottoman
can
Empire.
imagine what that did to the color scheme of things in
Mm-hmm.
Sicily.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, okay, the St. Joseph Day is celebrated on March 19th, and it's an all-day festival by the Italians because, according to their legends, the Italian legends, St. Joseph answered the prayer for rain during a drought in Sicily in the Middle Ages because they were Catholic. They were caught up in the mad Catholicism wars, the Christian wars they had, and they were converted to Catholicism. And the at the same time in the late 19th century, the Black Masking Indians had started. And one known Indian celebration by many in the city of New Orleans at that time was Black Hawk. That was not his name. I can't even pronounce his given name, his Native American name, but he was a war chief of the Black Hawk Indians. And so he got the moniker Black Hawk, and he was feared by the colonists and the armies coming in fighting for what we consider the United States. The Black Hawk Indians, unlike a lot of the Indian tribes, fought on the side of the British against those that became the Americans, want to, break away from the colonies. And he was feared. Some say he was supernatural. Um, he was a Sioux Indian,
Right.
Sauk, and he was feared. He was called the prophet amongst his people. He was known for his medicine bag. He was known for doing divinations, readings, and he was feared by the Americans, quote unquote, that were fighting against the British, so much so that the governor, when he died, which was October the 3rd, 1838, the then governor of the Iowa territories had them steal his bones and put them in his office where he could watch them. That's how scared they were that the other natives would get his bones and use the magic that he did when he was alive against them. Eventually, his bones ended up in a museum in Iowa, and Native Americans ended up, once they found out the bones were there, they burnt the museum to the ground. They burnt them to the ground, and it is said that the spirit and knowledge of Black Hawk, because he fought in the Midwestern United States, was where he was from, which is Heartland, Chicago, St. Louis, Detroit.
Kansas. Mm-hmm.
That was the area that his people lived. But they said the knowledge of him and his magic was brought to New Orleans by Miss Leafy Anderson, who founded the Spiritual Faith churches.
The Black spiritualist churches.
Yes. And that became associated with voodoo in the city.
Mm-hmm.
St. Joseph in Voodoo, at that tradition, was associated with Papa Loco or Legba to some, and his altars were adorned with yellow candles, cakes, beans, and lily flowers, and that was almost identical to the Italian St. Joseph altars, whose colors were green, yellow, white, and brown. No, who were pink, red, white, yellow, and green. The followers of Black Hawk, they often painted their faces and wore the then garb of the Native Americans. Um, Italians did their altars pretty much the same, with the cakes and the foods and the beans. And even the Italians gave out what is known as a lucky bean.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was coming up as a child in New Orleans, all women had a lucky bean in their purse.
Mm-hmm.
They had to get a lucky bean every year. Every year, they had to get one. And the lucky bean is a fava bean. And the Italians venerate the fava bean because during the drought that they had in Sicily, the fava bean was the only thing that grew. It was the only thing that grew to sustain them. So I could well see why so much in common, living in the same neighborhood where the two would join forces. They were kind of celebrating the same holidays on the same day with similar attributes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
By the late 1970s, Black Hawk was a fixture in the Black communities in New Orleans. Spiritual churches had been here for over 50 years. And it had said the Black Mass and Indians was said to have been founded at the end of the 19th century. I found the earliest known picture of the Black Masking Indians. One was in 1903. They do not look nothing like our Black Masking Indians today.
Except for maybe me.
Yeah, well, they didn't venerate the feathers as much. It
Yeah.
was more the animals, like the beaver cap headdresses, the raccoon hat, kind of similar to Daniel Boone hat, the deer
Mm-hmm.
antlers. They said that the Black Masking Indians started wearing the feathered headdress when they saw Native American Indians from the West come here with a Wild West show, and they had the war bonnets. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the native people of the South didn't wear war bonnets.
No.
They didn't wear war bonnets. They wore animal trapping, fur, nutria, stuff like that. But once they saw them in the Wild Bill West show, they added the war bonnets to their dress. And if you check in Wikipedia, under Native American influence of they call it the Mardi Gras Indians, they, in those days, they said they called upon the spirit of Black Hawk for peace and justice.
Mm-hmm.
And that was during the time when the Black Masked Indians actually went to war with each other and had many casualties between the tribes. It wasn't all grandeur and look at my costume. They had real hatchet, real spears, real knives, and I mean, it was a very territorial Indian type affair.
And you prayed and chanted to the gods and the ancestors before you went out that day that
Y-
you made it home.
Yes, yes. I mean, it was just they sent out a spy boy before the chiefs came out and the warriors came out to find out under the cover of darkness, the first darkness, to find out where the other Indian tribes were amassing, gathering, so that you could go and surprise them and catch them by surprise. It really was something to see, and the city of New Orleans for a long time tried to stop Black masking Indians, to put a halt to it, but they could never get quite a finger on it. Black masking
And,
Indians at that time came out at night,
mm-hmm.
not like they do now during the carnival, which is Mardi Gras Day. We call it carnival in the
Well,
Black community.
we still come out at night for St. Joe night.
Yes,
And
St.
certainly
Joseph night they come out.
the most
Yes,
recent attempt to sort of shut down or curtail our activities was 2005 in that city council meeting when beloved Tootie Montana, Big Chief Tootie Montana, died in the middle of that meeting where they
yes,
were trying to put, prohibitions on St. Joe night and
yes,
Super Sunday too.
yes. They wanted to cut all of that out. And he died giving his speech on why it was a cultural institution. He died right there. And Prince, me and you talked that day, and we both said something bad was coming to the city of New Orleans. They had angered the native ancestors. And I
Hmm.
don't think it was 2 or 3 months later that Katrina hit the city of New Orleans.
That's right. That's right.
So I
And then we had all
now,
kind of and then we had all kind of unusual interactions with the animals leading up to that.
yes. So I can see now for myself the connection between the Italians and the Black masking Indians. And that connection is from Black Hawk, which is voodoo. Sicilians had their own rituals and what they call superstitions. They did similar to our voodoo in the city, so they kind of fit right back in. Everywhere I looked, no one, when you read about the Black masking Indians and St. Joseph, no one could say how that came to be, but I think that's because they don't want to acknowledge the racist history of Europeans toward each other. They
Hmm.
try to forget about the Italians that they treated badly, and the Irish who dug these many canals we used to have and died and were just laid where they fell. That's where they was buried. by the dirt and stuff, and they don't want to talk about that.
Yeah. You know, for many generations, my father's side of the family, the Broomfields and the Harrises, claimed to be Black and indigenous or Aboriginal. And certainly this was, 100 years before DNA tests came out. I may be the first to take a DNA test and make the record public as it relates to my family. And come to find out, we were not Aboriginal or indigenous, but Western European and strongly Irish leaning. And so I begin to question why then would Irish folk mask their identity as indigenous or Aboriginal during that period, certainly for the sake of survival, but under what conditions? So when you begin to dig in these records and these archives and these stories, you come to hear tell of what you're suggesting about how badly Italians, Irish, and other ethnic groups were treated. May even be the origins of terms like PYT.
Yay.
Uh,
PYW.
well, as they used to say it back
Let's
in
just
the
say
50s.
passing.
In the 50s, that's why I use the acronyms and not the actual word. You know
Yeah.
how it was used back in the 50s
Oh
and
yeah,
before
it was
then.
used like that more than the 50s. It was used like that from the day slaves were freed.
Yeah. So
And
I think it's
house
certain.
slaves had to go out in the world, and
Hmm.
they found it easier to be one of those than to be who they were.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
My mother, who raised me, could have easily passed, and she refused to.
Hmm. Hmm.
She refused to, and she told me a minute she knew that went to Chicago, St. Louis, Detroit, up north, how they say. They went up north, and especially when they went westward to California. A lot of people want to forget about that great migration. It's a lot of stuff in our racial histories that are intertwined and people don't want to talk about now.
Yeah. Yeah. My great grandparents very well may have found it easier to pass as Aboriginal or indigenous as opposed to Irish.
And then another thing that you brought it up about the DNA test. I've become real leery of those DNA tests. Very few, I don't know any, and that's how I found my family. Through DNA testing, my birth family, which turned out to be very large. And when talking to my sisters, my siblings, and older family members, our family in Mississippi was indigenous. So much to the fact that my mother received checks from the United States government for her and her children, even when she was in St. Louis, for being indigenous. But when we took our DNA test, indigenous didn't show up in the amount that we should have. My grandmother brothers, according to my sister, Tina, still lived out in the woods and wore the loincloths and the moccasins and no shirt and hunted and all of this when she was a child. And she's just in her late 60s.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think that the DNA testers are doing some manipulation because we're owed something, the Black indigenous people that have it in their bloodstreams. We're owed by the United States government. We're subject to receive a lot of benefits that they gave the $5 Indians who bought up the lands, who now operate the casinos, when they took the native lands from them and had the great land grab of people saying, oh yeah, we Native American, we Native American. And that's another twisted, sordid tale. But if it was to come out in mass, the number of Black people that were actually 50%, 35% indigenous, the United States government would owe a lot of people a lot of money and benefits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there definitely might be something to that, for sure. I know that, I remember my great grandparents clearly. Um, they lived up until uh I want to say until I was in at least in the fifth grade, maybe the sixth grade in elementary school. And particularly my grandmother looked Aboriginal. She looked indigenous. One of our favorite things to do was to comb her hair. And she
Yes.
had just the longest hair I've yet to see till this day that wasn't a sew-in. This was her natural, straight, wavy, but straight hair, coarse hair. Um, and my grandfather probably looked more racially ambiguous, maybe even Creole to some degree, with curlier, coarse hair than she had. Another anomaly that I found quite interesting was that my great grandparents' parents were listed as white in the U.S. Census. My great grandfather's father was a Confederate soldier buried in Louisiana as white. All of their children, and they had more than a dozen children, um, were listed as white until my great grandfather and grandmother got married, and then in the following census, they show up as black
Well,
on the
colored.
census. Well, yeah, colored at that time. So that's another mystery I've yet to quite clarify as to what was really going on with that. And our Aboriginal percentage, according to really both Ancestry.com and 23andMe, is still at less than 2%. And they do put it in the region of uh, southwestern America, and even quite possibly northern Mexico territories.
Yes.
So
I
there
mean,
definitely
we
could be
have a
something.
tangled history in the South with other groups of people, the indigenous Aboriginal people of the South, as well as those that come from European countries, the French and the English. And it always, my adoptive mother, who was born in 1900, her grandmother was Native American and Aboriginal. And I too remember the long hair, the look, the coloration. And I always knew that my adoptive mother was, a high percentage of white, Black, and original Native. And I often wondered, what would her DNA test say today? If she was alive today to take a DNA, would they erase her original Aboriginal bloodline from her DNA test also. You know, because one of my sisters is adamant she can't believe how our DNA tests don't show that when they actually lived it. And
Yeah.
pictures show it of our great grandmothers and great uncles and, you know, great uncles and stuff. The pictures that the family still have show them to be originals, but the
Hmm.
DNA test doesn't record it.
Yeah, my father, his mother, um, all of her siblings, they have what we would consider distinct Aboriginal or indigenous features in terms of hair texture. They're lighter to fair, red-skinned people. Um, they have freckles. Another thing, well,
Yeah,
freckles are really common with the Broomfields in particular. So, I'm not one to jump on the conspiracy theories, and I'm certainly not a pretendian. But you could be right. You know, there could be some truth to what you're saying. It just seems so grand a scheme to eliminate so many different people. Not just black, but whites that may have very well intermixed with Aboriginals, and then to somehow hide that. I just can't wrap my mind around that even being a possibility.
but I think for myself, I have cracked the relation between the Black Mexican Indians and Saint Joseph of the Italians.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They had so much in common. I mean, I could put myself back in that time frame and seeing Italians who had altars in their homes that looked to Saint Joseph that looked almost identical to the altar in my home to Papa Legba,
Yeah. Yeah.
and thinking that they are worshiping Papa Legba. And they also had the Christian um saints on their altars, Mary,
Saint
the
Lazarus.
little statues of baby Jesus, because Saint Joseph was actually supposedly the what we want to call him, stepfather
The father
of,
of Christ. Yeah.
yeah, of the person that we come to call Jesus the Christ. And all of that in the beginning must have really sent the people talking.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
you having a celebration on the same day that we having a celebration. So I could see coming up in New Orleans how followers of Voodoo having a festival, the Italians having a festival to St. Joseph, the Voodoos having a St. Joseph festival, followers of Black Hawk, on the same street, on the same night. You know how it is in New Orleans. That
Mm-hmm.
turns into a block party.
Oh yeah. And the reach of Saint um Joseph, and particularly Black Hawk, just can't be, underestimated. I can't remember a black church, a black spiritualist church growing up that didn't have an Indian statue in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was as common as, Dr. King and the Kennedy. you
And
know.
the fact that Black Hawk was known for having spiritual gifts, spiritual gifts, gree bags, his
Mm-hmm.
medicine bags, his divination to help fight not only the the English, but other enemy tribes, because yes, they did fight each other,
Oh yeah.
and over infractions.
And Black
And
Hawk also kept possession alive in the black church well into the 1970s because, someone, one of the ministerial board or even one of the mothers board, would possess Black Hawk and they would put that war bonnet on her. And she would begin to speak like a man and gesture like Black Hawk, and would often administer, healing and readings and predictions in the church, under the spirit of Black Hawk.
yeah,
I saw that well into the 70s until the Pentecostals and the apostolic churches began to really take hold, and then you saw people beginning to debate, the validity of speaking in tongue, but you didn't quite see the Indian statues and the Black Hawk possessions taking place as much as you did back in the day.
Neophyte Bukur says that their great pawpaw was Blackfoot and served in the army during World War I, but had a Scottish last name.
Yes, indeed.
And that could very well be, through the intermingling of people. Because at one time, the English thought they was the ish, and
Yeah,
everybody was beneath them.
yeah. There was an ethnic hierarchy in Europe.
Yes,
Um, right alongside with them enslaving us, there was this, any amount of shade. But particularly when we think about, Queen Elizabeth, who was pale, worked at being pale. So there was a hierarchy of shadeism,
yes.
that predates the colorism that we think we understand today, that they carried into the so-called New World for sure.
And they didn't start grouping everybody with a white complexion under the term white until they needed the numbers, because people of color outnumbered them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they say, okay, let's forget our beef and unite against the people of color. To this day, a lot of Italians are not accepted in certain communities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And the Irish, to this day, red hair and, oddly enough, freckles are looked upon in a caste system where the people that possess these things are talked about in the negative. To this day.
And this is gonna sound so random, but in my coming up, I really began to first notice shade, ethnicity, race, that wasn't, centrally focused on black people, because I am a child of the '60s. Really from watching I Love Lucy, I found that to be the oddest show. I grew up with this understanding that
Uh-oh, you cut out.
Can you hear me?
You just came back.
Yeah, I had a
What
call
did you
interruption.
find out about I Love Lucy?
I found it odd that, one, I grew up with the understanding that Paul was racist, didn't particularly care for black people being on her set. But then she marries this Cuban who's
Well,
giving homage to Africa and African, culture and religion, with his Babalu, which we now know was a tribute to Babalu Oye. Um,
and
you know,
Dambala.
Yeah, the African deities. But then Ethel was always said to be from Albuquerque, and I couldn't understand, was she supposed to be white from Albuquerque? Was she supposed to be somehow, indigenous or racially mixed from Albuquerque? I mean, it was the first show as a kid where were the lines of just black and white. I knew what That's My Mama was. I knew what, my favorite Martian was. But Lucille Ball really brought, shadeism and colorism and race into television, in a way that at that age I hadn't really seen or experienced before. And then I just always found that grouping. And then when Ethel and Fred would, do the vaudeville shows, coming from Albuquerque, they were always masking Indian. And
Yes.
that just never made sense to me.
They were always indigenous, but Ricky Ricardo was what is considered a white Cuban. The
Well,
Cubans that Castro ran out of Cuba. See, that's another thing. A lot of people, the Cubans in Florida who hate Castro, Cuba at the time of Castro coming into it was under a high as Jim Crow as the United States was.
hmm
The dark skinned Cubans had to go in the back door and weren't allowed to um, swim on certain beaches and ride on public transportation at the front. They mimicked the United States. So Ricky Ricardo was one of those wealthy white Cubans. So you just well to say he was kind of passing. And then Castro came along and say, one Cuban people, one Cuba, no Jim Crow. And that was the falling out with the United States,
hmm hmm
you know, and it's a lot of stuff going on between coloration, complexion of skin. Castro say we're all Cubans, no matter your skin color, but they wasn't having it. He said, well, if you're not gonna go by them rules, get the hell out. And that's when they fled on the boats and it was revolution. No, that was the end of Jim Crow. That was the end of dark-skinned Cubans being treated less than.
hmm Yes, indeed.
So it's a lot, a lot. But like I say, when now, because I Love Lucy still comes on in syndication. And when I see him doing a scene in a nightclub singing Babalu, I was like, I wanted them white folks film and know what he was actually doing.
Did Lucille Ball know what he was actually doing?
Yes. Did she know what he was actually doing? Or did he sneak that in? And then when you look back upon reading about those characters and what they had to say in old age, the lady who played Ethel Mertz did not get along with Lucy, did
Vivian
not get along
Banks.
with Fred. They had clashes behind the scene to
Yeah.
say that it went on that long, the show.
Yeah.
So, you know, like my mom used to say, it's more things unseen in this world than seen.
And the
It's a
goddess
lot of
initiative,
entanglements in this country
the
than we know about.
initiative, she says, they knew. So, That's what the height of appropriation.
Man, it's just so much, conspiracy theory. That term, I think they made it out to be something bad to keep us from looking into certain areas of our history. I mean, I went to searching today. It was on my mind, and it looked like the spirit just led me to ask Google the right questions, because you got to know how to ask Google.
That's right. Especially now that they got this AI.
Yes, you got to know exactly how to word it. And it just looked like, I guess you could say, the spirit of Black Horse, possessed me to say the right words, to come up with the right connections. Pictures. I put them
Mm-hmm.
on my Black New Orleans Then and Now Facebook page. The pictures of the Black Masking Indians in 1903, and a picture of the Black Masking Indians from 1915, which was after the Wild West show had then came to the city.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
difference in the garbs that they wore when they masked. I put those pictures up. I also put up some good reading on the subject of St. Joseph and Black Masking Indians, but it still says that they don't know how the two became intertwined.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it is a good read. And once again, anyone listening, you could go on Facebook to Black New Orleans Then and Now. I put up a lot of Black unknown New Orleans history on that. That's all that page is, dealing with New Orleans.
And we certainly appreciate you tuning in with us every weeknight at 9 p.m. U.S. Central Standard Time for Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes, sponsored by NONVD, New Orleans National Voodoo Day. And again, we invite you to join us, sponsor us, participate with us. New Orleans National Voodoo Day highlights the beauty and power of voodoo traditions, and your sponsorship makes it possible. Partnering with us, this unique celebration showcases your business's commitment to culture while amplifying your visibility in the community. Let's make history together. Sponsoring New Orleans National Voodoo Day supports cultural education, drives tourism, and strengthens community bonds. From 500 to 10,000, your support helps make this celebration unforgettable. Learn more about sponsorship benefits at www.vodouday.org. That's www.voodooday.org. And we look forward to sharing and being with you here again next time at 9 p.m. U.S. Central Standard Time on a social media platform near you, and always in archive on my YouTube page. Thank you kindly, Odabo. Good night, peace and blessings, Tariq Lopez. Thank you so much to Goddess Initiative. Thank you, Neophyte Bokor, for coming through. Maceo, thank you so much. The Alchemist, thank you for your continued support. Tariq Lopez and Daniel Neal. And certainly we thank you, Queen Mother, Sister Tony Val, for joining us nightly for this powerful podcast.
Peace and blessings. Good night, everyone. Have a
Good
safe
night.
and blessed evening.
At the beginning of this, maybe I was more skeptical. As the days have gone on, I'm not sure what I think anymore.
I felt that maybe it wouldn't affect me if I personally didn't believe in it.
So, knowing what you know now, would you still get cursed?
I'm seeking out a curse, a hex to put on myself.
A curse could end your life. You're literally begging the devil to knock on your door just to prove to you that God's real.
He could curse you with stupidity, but we think you got that down.
Despite the warnings, I'm investigating the real-world effects of dark magic.
Looks like you have a lot of love and a lot of opportunity. You are going to cause damage to that.
How do you feel after doing this?
Evil.
That must be quite seductive.
That's the power you're calling on. The devil, right? Quite seductive.
I'm going to enter into a pact with Satan.
Señor Satán, Lucifer, presentamos a este hermano. Con tu fuego purifica.
Wyong is pretty much the epicenter of all black magic. People are very scared to even talk about it.
Y'all better not call me at 2 o'clock in the morning talking about this man is dead. I don't want to hear that.
I have this physical feeling that something bad is coming. What have I done?
You're going to have to find faith in this in order to undo it.